goodness. This is going on and on.
Whoa.
Quentin Johnston is a one-on-one.
Not only were the Raiders frustrated in this matchup, but you also had Raiders fans in LA losing control. Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce may have talked too much trash in this past offseason, especially when he said he had the recipe to beat the Chiefs.
It's cool. Like I told them, we're running back. We'll see them again. They got to see us. We got to see them. And we already given the recipe of how to do it.
Well, it looks like the Raiders had a disgusting recipe to beat the Chargers.
Smell that. That is rancid. The most disgusting kitchen ever.
In the offseason, Antonio Pierce assured us that we don't have to worry about the Raiders quarterback.
God bless everybody else. Don't worry about our quarterbacks, buddy. Worry about yours. Worry about yours.
But it seems like right now, Raiders fans are hitting the panic button. But honestly, Pierce's unprecedented coaching decisions led to the Raiders losing this game. And now the facade of being from Compton, driving a lowrider, and wearing Air Force Ones is starting to wear off on Raiders fans. At first, it seemed like the Raiders were going to win this game. When you took a look at the crowd out there in SoFi Stadium in LA, it was all black. The entire crowd was black. This was a home game for the Raiders. Jim Harbaugh, in his Chargers debut, knew that he had to fire up Justin Herbert just to block out all that Raiders noise. But early on in this game, in the first quarter, we saw a horrible coaching decision by Raiders head coach Antonio Pierce. On the second offensive drive, the Raiders looked like they converted a first down with a quick pass to wide receiver Trey Tucker. But unfortunately, they got a bad spot and were called short. And in this moment, Antonio Pierce should have thrown out the challenge flag. He should have said, hey, I want you to take a look at that spot. I think my guy got a first down, because it definitely looked like it. But instead, Pierce decided to go for it on 4th and 1 in Raiders territory in the first quarter on barely the second offensive drive for the team. The Raiders were instantly stuffed with a run up the middle, and this decision just gift-wrapped points for the LA Chargers. They were instantly able to grab 3 points after the turnover on downs. But then the Raiders started to make me believe. In the second quarter, Minshew Mania was able to get going and threw a beautiful pass to running back Alexander Mattison, who made some moves and got the first touchdown of the entire game. In this moment, I thought, whoa, is Antonio Pierce, a rookie head coach, and Gardner Minshew, a backup throughout his career, gonna absolutely shock the world and stun Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert? Is this seriously gonna go down? You even saw Harbaugh have to rally his team as they were down against the Raiders in that first half. What was so disappointing is that when Minshew started clicking with the tight ends and moving the football down the field, he ended up having probably one of the worst passes of his entire career. It seemed like the ball slipped out of Minshew's hand when he was trying to get a quick pass to Davante Adams, and it looks like he threw it backwards. It was a backwards pass that counted as a fumble, and this allowed the Chargers to scoop it up and get in beautiful field position against the Raiders. But hey, I was willing to let this slide. It was just a freak accident, and he was moving the ball. But really, after that drive, we never saw the Raiders offense able to click for the rest of the game. However, I don't think that this was Gardner Minshew's fault. I'm going to defend him here because, yeah, he had that one mistake, but the majority of the game, he was under duress. He was sacked multiple times. The offensive line really did not help him at all, and the only time the Raiders offense got going is when Minshew extended plays, used his legs, and was able to get some decent throws. The Raiders also could not run the ball at all during this game. They were completely one-dimensional. Part of the hype for the Raiders this year is that they have two great tight ends with Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer, and they're going to run 12 personnel, and it's going to really test defenses. Well, that only works when you're able to run the ball. So the Raiders weren't able to get the mismatches they wanted, and you already had fans during the game screaming saying they want Aiden O'Connell, the guy who lost the job in preseason. But honestly, I think this game would have gone worse if Aiden O'Connell had started. He is a statue in the pocket. I think the Chargers would have had even more sacks. And if anything, Minshew spent most of the day turning nothing into something. In my opinion, what really ended this game was the awful coaching decisions. A lot of the offensive play calling was suspect. Luke Getsy, the former Bears offensive coordinator, now Raiders offensive coordinator, did not have a good day calling the game. Remember, the Raiders were supposed to grab Cliff Kingsbury as their offensive coordinator, but they were not willing to guarantee him a third year on his contract, and that is because, according to all accounts, Antonio Pierce only has a 2-year contract. Obviously, you can't have the offensive coordinator with a longer contract than the head coach. So Luke Getsy was literally a consolation prize for the Raiders. This is like asking one girl out to prom and then she says no, and then you have to go ahead and downgrade with your backup plan. Aside from the offensive coordinator, I think the head coach's decision-making was arguably worse for the Raiders. The Raiders still had a shot to get the lead with 7 minutes to go in the game. Even though Pierce had already gone for it on 4th and 1 in his own territory in the first quarter, like we mentioned earlier, he refused to go for it on 4th and 1 in Chargers territory with a game on the line and 7 minutes to go. When Raiders fans saw the punt team come out in this moment, there were tons of boos from the crowd.
Be prepared for a possible fake. This is safe punt.
NFL pundits ripped into this decision by Antonio Pierce, calling it one of the dumbest decisions they have seen in a long time. And technically, this is the first time a coach has punted on 4th and 1 in opponent's territory while down 1 possession in the fourth quarter since 2016. It's literally been 8 years since somebody has made this mistake. Chargers defensive end Joey Bosa said he was absolutely shocked that Antonio Pierce made this decision. And honestly, Antonio Pierce during this game looked very uncomfortable, and in the post-game press conference, he did not have the confidence that we saw during the offseason. He was asked about his decision.
Yeah, field position, defensively, punter. We got what we wanted. We got him backed up. We got 3 timeouts there.
So Pierce technically defended his decision and doubled down on it. Raiders owner Mark Davis watched this game and he could only wonder, maybe I should have signed Jim Harbaugh instead of listening to the fans and signing Antonio Pierce. Remember, in the offseason, reports emerged that Jim Harbaugh was interested in the Raiders' job. He wanted to go there, but the Raiders decided to listen to the fans and players and sign Antonio Pierce instead. The Raiders essentially rejected Jim Harbaugh, and actually Antonio Pierce was asked about this before the start of the game over the weekend. He was asked about competing with Harbaugh for this job.
You guys were both linked to this job during the offseason.
Ultimate respect. If it's between me and Harbaugh, that's not a bad thing. AP standing here though.
Personally, I think the whole talking in third person shtick needs to stop until the Raiders win at least one game. After the horrible 4th and 1 decision, we saw this game completely unravel for the Raiders. The run game got going for the Chargers. J.K. Dobbins was busting off some big runs, and it really just put the dagger in the heart in the Raiders team, and this game was absolutely over towards the end of the fourth quarter. After being down 2 scores, the frustration got to the Raiders, and you saw them start a tussle with Chargers players after they scored, and this led to multiple players getting ejected, including the Raiders' starting corner, Jack Jones. What's really scary about this is that there could be multiple suspensions as the NFL reviews this tussle. You saw multiple starters get physical, not just the defensive backs, but you also saw Christian Wilkins, Max Crosby, and several other players get in the mix. Jim Harbaugh went out on the field and helped break this up because obviously nobody is going to swing on a head coach. But really, the Raiders lack depth overall, and they cannot afford to lose any players, let alone starting players. And the NFL already has a bias against the Raiders, and they're going to review this and dish out a punishment. To me, this lack of discipline showed that Antonio Pierce does not have that much control over the team as we initially thought. And it almost seemed like this loss was just so disappointing and demoralizing for the Raiders that some of the players just said F it, didn't give a crap about the future, and decided to make this boneheaded mistake. After the game, broadcaster Tony Romo tried to polish the turd and say that Antonio Pierce has the Raiders in the right direction. But just like I predicted in the offseason, it seems like fans are already turning on him. He's in a division with Sean Payton, Andy Reid, and Jim Harbaugh, 3 head coaches with tons of experience. And before becoming the interim head coach last year, Antonio Pierce had only ever been a linebacker coach at the NFL level. He's never even been a coordinator before. I made a couple videos in the offseason warning that Antonio Pierce may be in over his head for this job. And I was called a fake fan, and I was called a hater, and I was absolutely flamed in the comments just for pointing out the facts. But this is what Raiders fans wanted. They liked the fact that Pierce drives a lowrider, smokes cigars, wears Air Force Ones, and also yells Raiders. But after week 1, this rah-rah shtick is already getting old. The Chargers were supposed to be one of the easier rosters that the Raiders faced this year. And look, I'm being critical. I hope that Antonio Pierce completely turns this around and saves the season, but we got to keep it real. Next week, the Raiders travel on the road to the Baltimore Ravens. They're literally facing a team that could quite possibly go to the Super Bowl this year. While I'm going to be live on this channel reacting to this game, hoping the Raiders win, we got to keep it real and say the Raiders are likely taking an L here. So as Raiders fans, we have to hope that the Raiders can turn it around in week 3 for their home opener against the Carolina Panthers, which look to be a really bad team this year. But if the Raiders lose in week 3 against the Panthers at home, I think the fan base will officially be fed up with Antonio Pierce and it will be completely over. In the background, you also have former Raiders head coach Jon Gruden starting a new YouTube channel. Gruden is dropping videos showing his football knowledge every single week, and I think he's going to be a constant reminder to Raiders fans of what could have been. With each loss, there are going to be thousands of Raiders fans, not just me, demanding that Mark Davis do the right thing and bring Jon Gruden back. But like I said, as a fan, I am going to root for the Raiders to win every single game and hope that's the case with Antonio Pierce. I'm going to hope he turns this season around. But with being inexperienced, not getting the coordinator or the quarterback that he wanted this year, Antonio Pierce has a steep hill to climb. My name is Wi-Fi Willie. Subscribe to me for more NFL content. Peace out, and I hope you have a good one.